This is from the website thewaythetruthandthelife.net. I just watched a video of the father of a British citizen in a Muslim jihadist recruiting video, and it grieves me to see the deception or ignorance, I don't know which, but this message is for all people. I've been following the demonization of the Buddhists as they fight back against Muslim behavior. And there's little understanding among nice Muslims of what they're up against, and little understanding amongst everyday American and British and European citizens of what they're up against. And I have some insight, and I would like to share that with you. This is Saturday, June 21st, 2014. The jihadist video appeared yesterday. The father responded today. And I will show you that video of the father and then the jihadist, and I will explain to Muslims the problem that they have with being deceived or being deceivers, and the roots that aren't going to change. But people have to change to understand what's happening to them, that they are victims.
What's your reaction to that?
I want to cry. Why are you doing this? Who led him to go there? Who make fatwa for them to go there? On what basis? On what kind of sharia on this? Is he going to kill or is he going to do anything? He didn't think of children, women, elderly people, the green trees, the animals. Somebody is driving those kids to do this problem. Ask those sheikhs to send their sons and daughters to fight. They won't send it. They only send other people, children. Thus they're making problem for the whole community. Not for the Muslim people in the UK. I think they're making problem for the whole community in the UK. For the different, we are multicultural society in the UK, and they are making problem is people who have the money, who have the can supply them with the ammunitions, and with the people who can talk them and guide them to the wrong guide.
Now I will show you the jihadist, the Islam recruiting video. And as I prepare this, I realize I will show 2 more videos after that to help give background observations that you can understand reality. I will show you the video of the young man beheading a young man in the streets of London as he, the murderer, had returned from jihad. And I will show you a Muslim cleric saying the truth.
Banned in Britain, but busy recruiting from all over the world.
We have brothers from Bangladesh, from Iraq, from Cambodia, Australia, UK.
This propaganda video by the extremist group ISIS appears to show at least 3 British jihadists in Syria, a land they call Sham.
We understand no borders. Walillah alhamd, we have participated in battles in Sham, and we will go to Iraq in a few days.
It's a recruitment video posted online, and the Home Office wants it taken down.
This is a message to the brothers who stayed behind.
This man from Australia has since been killed, and tonight This man's father, of Yemeni origin, spoke out from the family home in Cardiff.
I want to cry. Why are you doing this? Who led them to go there? Who make fatwa for them to go there? On what basis?
The video, slickly produced and widely circulated, has appalled Britain's largest collective of Muslim organisations.
The mainstream Muslim reaction is to make sure that the young people do not appreciate that they're going away there, or actions like that is not going to help either the Muslim community or the Iraqis, and it will only cause worries and anguish to their parents.
Nearly 500 Britons are believed to have gone to fight in Syria, most joining extremist groups. They include this man, the Crawley bomber, the first Briton to blow himself up there. ISIS and its followers are making extensive use of social media. It's an integral part of their strategic plan to take over more territory.
They are so present and their message gets out so quickly and it's so powerful. And there may even be a military purpose to that, in the sense that their opponents are so scared of them because they seem so powerful, they seem so brutal and gruesome, that this kind of propaganda that gets out almost has a strategic military component to it.
ISIS members are fighting in two countries, Syria and Iraq. But here the government believes they also pose a threat to Britain. Whitehall officials will not reveal exactly what the intelligence is that's prompting the government to say ISIS is planning to attack the UK. But we've learned that MI5, the security service here, are now having to devote the greatest amount of their casework to tracking jihadists leaving Britain for Syria, and some coming back from there. For now, the focus of ISIS fighters like these is firmly on the Middle East. But the more the West gets drawn into the conflict in Iraq, the more Britain risks becoming their target. Frank Gardner, BBC News.
Now the video of a young man, jihadist, returning to England to behead, to murder a man on the street in London. This is the third of 4 videos that I will show as an introduction.
And in Surah At-Tawbah, through many ayat throughout the Quran, that we must fight them as they fight us, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I apologize that women had to witness this today, but in our land, our women have to see the same. You people will never be safe. Remove your governments, they don't care about you.
God damn, man. You speaking on my camera, man. Oh, man.
I don't know if you caught it. This murderer said the truth. He innocently followed the Quran.
I just wonder why you won't condemn it when your own leader, Omar Bakri, said quite simply, I condemn the killing of innocent people on the 20th of July.
Yeah,
why won't you say what he said?
No, at the end of the day, innocent people, when we say innocent people, we mean Muslims. As far as non-Muslims are concerned, they have not accepted Islam. As far as we're concerned, that is a crime against God.
I want to be clear about what you're saying. This is very important. You're saying only Muslims can count as innocent people.
As far as Muslims are concerned, you're innocent if you are a Muslim, then you're innocent in the eyes of God. If you are a non-Muslim, then you're guilty of not believing in God. Yes, there were many victims.
You're guilty. Are you seriously suggesting that everybody on those tube trains and on that bus in London on July the 7th was in some way a legitimate target?
You don't allow me to answer the question fully, Stephen. You're never going to get to the bottom of it. Let me begin by saying, as a Muslim, you must have allegiance where the Sharia says that you have allegiance. You must hate and love for the sake of Allah. You must praise and dispraise for what the Sharia says you praise and dispraise. So as a Muslim, I must support my Muslim brothers and sisters, wherever they are in the world. I must have allegiance with them. I must cooperate with them. I must love them. And similarly, on the other hand, I must have hatred towards everything which is non-Islam.
You know what, I'm trying not to interrupt you too much, but I still don't feel you have addressed my question. Were the people on the underground trains and on the bus legitimate targets targets because they were not Muslim.
I'm coming on to your point.
And of course, some of them actually were.
No, you've asked about 2 or 3 different questions. You've asked about innocence. You've asked about whether they were a legitimate target. You've asked about whether I'm condoning or condemning. You've asked about whether I praise them.
We've moved on
those
from
questions,
that.
No, but all of those
you a
questions,
very simple
all
question.
of those questions deserve to be answered, and obviously we have the time to explore them. So if I just continue with this particular point, as far as Muslims are concerned, their allegiance is always with the Muslims. So I will never condemn a Muslim for what he does. Indeed, I must stand with him, whether he's an oppressor or oppressed.
Sheikh Bakri declared Britain to be Dar al-Harb, which basically means a land of war, a land
Britain's
where...
always been Dar al-Harb. Britain's always been Dar al-Harb. Dar al-Harb is a place where there is non-Islamic law. The whole world today is Dar al-Harb. Dar al-Harb
The point about being a land which is Dar al-Harb is that you and your group therefore feel you have license to conduct violent operations within it.
Fact is that the whole world is Dar al-Harb. There are certain areas where the Muslims are actively liberating their land.
So why on the 18th of January did Omar Bakri declare Britain to be Dar al-Harb? If it's always been the case, why did he choose to say it?
Yeah, because you never bothered to listen to him before. But the fact is that Britain changed from being Dar al-Harb to being Dar al-Fitna. Dar al-Fitna is a place where the Muslims no longer have sanctity for their life and their wealth. That was the change. Otherwise, Britain has always been Dar al-Harb.
Zawahri has said that he believes there will be, should be, new operations in London, inshallah, God willing. Do you feel the same way?
But I think that's inevitable. If you don't change the cause of what took place on 7/7,
I'm not asking you if you feel it's inevitable. I'm asking you if, like him, you are calling for them.
No, what we're calling for the British public and the British government to wake up. Withdraw your forces from the
I'm asking you not to talk about the British government. I'm asking you to give me your opinion on Al-Qaeda's leaders' new calls for attacks in the United Kingdom and in London.
That's his call, isn't it? So obviously,
I'm asking you, will you condemn it?
No, I can never condemn a Muslim brother. I will never condemn a Muslim brother. I will always stand with my Muslim brother.
So you stand with him, you want those attacks to continue in London. You stand with him, you just said it.
Yeah, I'm finished my sentence. Let me finish my sentence. I will stand with my Muslim brother whether he's an oppressor.
Chowdhury is an Islamic lawyer and believes that Islam has reached a point that it can speak out openly and honestly. That is not always the case, and there are many that still believe that Islam in the West is an inferior status, and therefore they must deceive the unbeliever. This is part of the Quran, both the murdering and the deceiving.
Announcing Book 5 of the Crackpot Conspiracy Series. Islamic World Domination, Fact or Fiction? By Martin and Patricia Riot is now available at Amazon. Is Islam really a religion of peace? Do you believe the war on terror is really over, as the Obama administration claims? Do you believe the ongoing jihadist attacks around the globe are peaceful? Did you know that the Quran, or Quran, the Holy Book of Islam, commands its followers to spread Islam by the sword? And Muslims have been doing just that for centuries. The Quran also instructs its followers to lie, that's known as taqiyya, or to lie by omission, known as kitman, in order to spread Islam. But one of the biggest lies is that Islam is a religion of peace. Instead, Islam is a religion of war, violence, and vengeance to be spread by the sword. The goal of Islam is that Allah's word and religion reign supreme. According to the Quran, the holy book of Muslims and Islam, Muslims are to pretend to be friendly to unbelievers until strong enough to overcome them. Then Muslims are to make war against unbelievers, that's non-Muslims, converting them by the sword. Also, according to the Quran, any people conquered by the sword must then convert to Islam, or submit to virtual slavery, or be killed. Some list of choices, huh? Make no mistake about it. The goal of Islam is Islamic world domination, and that's as instructed by their holy book, the Quran. Allah will only be satisfied when the entire world is Muslim. The teachings of the Quran, the basis of Sharia law, give no rights to women or children, and Islamic supremacists are pushing to have Sharia law in the USA. Islamic supremacists are working in the USA and around the globe to gain the power necessary to overthrow and dominate all infidels. And that would be us, folks. Islamic supremacists are using taqiyya, remember that's lying commanded by the Quran, to lull us into accepting Sharia law and eventual Muslim domination. Barack Hussein Obama is allowing infiltration into the highest levels of our government to these Islamic supremacists who have sworn to destroy us from within by our own hands. Obama is even allowing Islamic supremacists into sensitive positions of national security and national defense. We ask you again, do you believe Islam is a religion of peace? Do you believe the war on terror is over? Get your copy today of Islamic World Domination, Fact or Fiction by Martin and Patricia Riot, and discover the truth for yourself. Islamic World Domination, Fact or Fiction by Martin and Patricia Riot is now available at Amazon.com.
It is May 29th here in the Caucasus of southern Russia, and I'm responding to someone that sent me a comment, and they're that Peace Train 99, and a video that his website showed me failed to recognize the fundamental deception that is part of the Quran and the way it introduces itself to peaceful non-believers. I will show you the video and interrupt where that deceit is shown.
Many former Muslims are now involved in efforts to convert believers in Islam to Christianity. CBN News hooked up with some of them as they linked up with other Christians at the Seattle Revival Center. They trained in how best to reach Muslims and then went out to do just that at Seattle's annual Arab Festival.
For some reason, Christians think Muslims are particularly hard to witness to. But this group points out they have the exact same spiritual need as everybody else.
The leader of Arabic Christian Perspective says dig into your own past and fears.
How we used to be not assured of our salvation, we used to be afraid of dying, and this is the same common ground that the Muslims have today, that they are not assured of their salvation, they're afraid of dying, but Jesus came to our life and changed our life. This is the story we need to tell them, that how Jesus changed my life and how he's able to change theirs too.
Kamal Salim came to America to recruit terrorists, but instead became a convert to Christ.
3 Christian men reached out to me and loved me unconditionally.
But many years before that, he was a terrorist, even as a child.
I joined the PLO when I was 7 years old. Before that, I was with a group called the Muslim Brotherhood when I was 6 years old. I went to a salt camp when I was 7 years old. Went on my first mission when I was 7 years old. I became a recruiter when I was 7 years old.
He fought in many battles and wars against Christians in Lebanon, Russians in Afghanistan, Jews in Israel. But he ended up in America, recruiting new converts here.
First, you teach them Islamic teaching. And once it's embedded in their system, then you teach them how to use the gun.
George Saig agrees with Salim that Islam preaches violence.
When I see Surah 9:5, it talk about kill the Christian and Jews, the people of the book, wherever you found them. When I see Surah 9:29, also it's almost similar to that. There's over 140 verses in the Quran talk about killing.
Salim says don't buy everything you hear about Islam these days.
Muslims say we're people of peace. We worship the same God.
But what they're really taught...
Jews are pigs and monkeys. Jews, they must be killed. The rock will cry out, there's a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him.
Muslims, they say, believe Christ was a mere man.
He didn't even die on the cross. He was lifted up and he's coming back and he will be a Muslim.
Arabic Christian Perspective hopes to open up many Islamic eyes when it holds a debate with Muslim apologist Nadir Ahmed in Anaheim, California, October 20th. Ahmed is raring to debate the key question, whether Islam is a religion of peace or terrorism.
Yeah, there's a lot of anti-Islamic propaganda, especially by Pat Robertson and CBN and places like that. And, you know, I'm really shocked to see how evangelicals love to promote this idea that it's not a religion of peace.
Ahmed seems a natural for this debate. He runs his own website defending Islam.
I believe there's clear teachings to promote peace with non-Muslims. And those verses are not mentioned by these propagandists, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mention those verses.
You can find elsewhere that Islam teaches to deceive the non-believer. And I'll leave that. But what Nadir Ahmed is doing here is a deception that he knows, and every imam knows. That is that Muhammad changed. He was defeated by an Arab tribe in Mecca and left and went and made war, rape, pillage, and plunder, building an army with the booty that he could collect and gathering these people onto him. And he made himself a prophet, praying towards Jerusalem. He believed that the Jews and the Christians would end up submitting to him as the last prophet. When he had built a large enough army of rape, pillage, and plunder cohorts, he went back to Mecca, and he had a battle with the Arab tribe. When they came after him, he had dug ditches, and the horses fell in the ditches. They defeated the Arab army, the tribe that was against him. But the Jewish tribe that lived there did not help him. The next day, Muhammad personally beheaded over 600 of the men of that tribe and put their bodies in those ditches that they had dug for the Arab horses. After that, Muhammad turned hateful towards Christians and Jews and wrote many hateful surahs. Well, there he had the problem of good and bad. How do they determine the order of precedence? In Surah 2, verse 106, Muhammad says, "And whatsoever verse we abrogate and cast into oblivion, we bring a better or the like of it. Knowest thou not that Allah is powerful over everything?" So this is what every imam knows, that the surahs that came after that are what have precedence. And what they have done to deceive the non-believer and the peaceful converts until they're indoctrinated, they mixed up the order of the surahs so that peaceful ones came first, and then the ugly ones about the murder and the killing. So that's the big secret, and this man, Nadir Ahmed, knows that secret, and you didn't, but now you do.
But it didn't seem very peaceful when Muslims eavesdropped on our CBN News interview with Saeed, then ripped into him for telling us Islam was not a religion of peace. They yelled and screamed he wasn't telling the truth, shouting down the former terrorist Salim as he tried to defend Saeed. Meanwhile, Ahmed insists Americans misunderstand Muslims and key Islamic words like jihad, which means struggle.
Somebody's struggling with alcoholism, and he's trying to stay away from that. That's a jihad against alcohol.
But Saeed says jihad almost always means bloody struggle. And Salim warns that right here in America, there are 45 Islamic assault camps where would-be terrorists train.
These are embedded in different states. Today, the recruiting ground is in prison system, high schools, universities, neighborhood.
It's to counter such efforts that Saeed and his people are reaching out as quickly as they can to Muslims at Arab festivals like this one in Seattle and a recent one in Dearborn, Michigan, where dozens converted.
Praise the Lord that we have 42 Muslims came to the Lord.
These former Muslims insist Islamic people are not by nature violent. They totally blame the mayhem and terror pouring out of Islamic lands on the religion itself.
I really look at Osama bin Laden himself as a victim of Islam. My problem is not with Osama bin Laden. My problem is not with the Muslim people. My problem is the teaching of Islam, the teaching of Quran. Because this is what pushed Muslims to do what they're doing.
So while these Christians say that Islam itself may be a danger, they believe the Islamic people are as deserving of love as anyone else and can be just as open to Jesus. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the Arab Festival in Seattle, Washington.
You can stop frame on this last image. It has the web addresses for the Quran at the University of Michigan and for the Quran on my website where there are important links. Thank you.
This is scary because we're getting into religion, but might as well, we're here. One thing that struck me long before we got into Afghanistan after 9/11 was the blowing up of the Buddha over there. Because most religions have respect for other religions in terms of their historic importance in their country. I mean, I may not be Jewish, but I respect the Jewish tradition in this country and obviously the freedom of everybody in this country going way back. But also there's a sense that even if you're a minority religion, you tend to respect the larger religion that's been there longer and has something to do with the country's history. For them to blow up the Buddha, which was dynamited on national, international television, but then to complain that some character down in Florida burn a Bible, burn a Koran. There's no symmetry to this. I mean, if it's okay for them to destroy a Buddha that's been there hundreds of years, and yet they go crazy. In other words, their religion is the only thing that matters on the planet. Everybody else doesn't matter.
Chris, it's not even. This is not even about.
Let's talk about the zealots themselves.
Yeah, this is a bunch of
20,000 people.
Yeah, this is a bunch of people. The Taliban, when they blew up the Buddhas, they did something just as medieval as the pastor has done. Why would you want to burn somebody else's book? It doesn't make sense in the 21st century. In the same way that it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to blow up something like the Buddhas were part and parcel of the history of that country. Right. Why would you resort to something like that? And ultimately,
well, that's the question.
I mean, ultimately, regardless of your motives, whether you, the pastor, General Petraeus told him in 2010, don't do it. You're going to make the U.S. position in Afghanistan even more tenuous. He went ahead and did it. So now the ramifications are actually for U.S. presence in Afghanistan over something totally medieval by both sides.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Any authorized Islamic preacher must know Arabic and have memorized the Quran. The Quran teaches to hate the unbeliever, to kill the unbeliever, to deceive if you don't have the power to bring them into conformity or murder them, to compare the Quran with another book is a travesty. It is far worse than Mein Kampf. It is a book that teaches a pyramid scheme of murder to get to heaven, and their rewards are in this world. Muhammad built his pyramid scheme by giving women and booty to those who would follow and submit to him. He personally beheaded the Qurayza tribe, all the men that had pubic hair, and the women and children were given as slaves and concubines to his followers. So the deception, the Quran, it needs to be seen for the truth of it. Read the Quran. Now, hear about madrasas, and that children need to memorize this so they are indoctrinated robot murderers.
I wake up every day and I think I'm at home, but then I open my eyes and I see I'm in my room, I'm in the madrasa. And it always strikes me with it's like a big punch. Like, I came here and I'm not with my family. All these kids are sleeping in the room with me. I miss my family so much. I'm never gonna send my kids off to a madrasa by themselves.
मेरा नाम मुफ्ती मोहम्मद नईम है। मैं जामे बिनूरिया आलमिया का प्रिंसिपल हूँ। अमेरिका के लड़के लड़कियां मिलाकर 70-80 बच्चे भी पढ़ रहे हैं।
This place is disgusting. It smells. It's dirty all around. You get sick too much here. I can't sleep right. The teachers hit everybody and hit them with man punches.
ना यहाँ टेररिस्ट पैदा किए जा रहे हैं, यहाँ ना दहशतगर्द पैदा किए जा रहे हैं, ना यहाँ कोई ट्रेनिंग सेंटर है।
You don't know how badly I want to go back. If there was a plane right now, I'd just go step on it and go back to America.
How has your life changed since you come here?
Since the first time we met you, it changed a lot.
अब बच्चों का जब हम ज़हन ये बनाते हैं तो एक ज़हन ऐसा बन जाता है कि ये बच्चे इंशाल्लाह जब अपने मुल्कों में जाएंगे तो वहाँ जाकर उन बच्चों का भी ज़हन ये बनाएंगे कि भाई इनको तुम जो है।
Okay, well, what other things do you believe?
I believe all this stuff.
You still want to go back to the U.S.?
Well, yeah, kind of. ये बच्चे गैर मुस्लिमों को भी मुसलमान बना सकेंगे और जो मुसलमानों की औलादें भटक रही हैं गलत रास्ते में उनको भी सही करेंगे।
Last year you were determined to go back. Now it seems like
kind of like a robot with no feelings. I'll probably. You try living here for like almost 3 years or something, and then let's see how you act. But when you're in an environment where it's 24/7 Islam, then you kind of start understanding what it's really about.
मसलन ये इफ्तिखार है, ये अपने इलाके के अंदर जब बन के जाएगा और लोग इसको देखेंगे कि पहले इसकी क्या हालत थी।
My main goal is to go back to spread Islam all over USA.
I'm glad my father sent me here. I've turned into a better person.
There's some people that are kind of corrupted in the mind, just like American people are that are corrupted in mind, that bombing places, killing people.
Well, not one Jewish person died in the 9/11 attacks.
The Muslim people didn't do it.
Behind the 9/11 attacks, there was no Muslim involved.
You're the terrorists. American people are terrorists. We're not the terrorists. We're trying to save our family. We're trying to have a mom and dad. We wish we had a mom and dad, but until you guys came and killed them.
This world wasn't made for us to enjoy life. It was made for us so that we could obey God.
This book, which every child raised as a good Muslim must memorize, that says to hate the unbeliever, to murder anyone who does not accept Allah and Muhammad and submit. The book has in it Jesus, but he's not the Christ. He's an inferior prophet to Muhammad. But from the apocryphal book, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, Muhammad got where Jesus made mud birds and blew on them and they fly away. This lunacy that teaches hatred and murder, that children are, it's child sacrifice. It's such an evil. Can't people see this? That I would like to talk to you about how to help. I mean how to help Muslims, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hinduists. There's so much cult, evil, murder, domination, indoctrination, child sacrifice. These cults need to be separated from the religion of seeking the truth, the cosmological, empirical investigation of reality. And I can help you with this. I will use an introduction from the radio show Coast to Coast with that I recorded last winter. And I'll share a bit of that with you, and I'll share the website page that you could hear the rest. I'm just going to give an introduction from this Coast to Coast radio broadcast, it says some very important things. You can go to this webpage to get the full 2 hours of this broadcast.
Welcome back. Matthew Alper, educated at Vassar and North London University, a degree in philosophy of science. He spent extensive time living abroad in Europe, Africa, Asia, studied world cultures there and history, and went on to become a screenwriter and then write his incredible work, The God Part of the Brain, which I talked with him about back a couple of years ago. Matthew, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
So I wanted to ask you a question,
Mm-hmm.
and that is, let's assume for a moment that there is no life after death, that everything we've heard is a bunch of nonsense, and that when we die physically, that's it. It's over. How do you think people would live and react if they believe that?
Excellent question. It's kind of hard to predict the outcome of what kind of effect that would have on the world at large. And it is, for the most part, what I am asserting, that there is no afterlife. We die, it's done.
Do you feel empty thinking that way?
I hope not. You know, I managed to live this long, and here I am on the telephone speaking with you. An honor indeed. And I think if I felt that empty, I don't think I'd have the passion to have done any of the above. So, no, it did not steal the joy of life or the passion for living from me. On the contrary, I think one can take it the other direction, which is instead of sort of hedging all your bets on some other place where things are going to be wonderful and all popcorn and candy cane, I think it makes you reevaluate the way you're going to live your life here and now, and kind of, I mean, personally, I think we should hedge our bets the other way. I think we should say, well, since I don't know for sure, I should, you know, live to the fullest extreme that I can and really try to work stuff out and figure out my goals and find that balance in life and live as if this is my only existence. And, you know, if I'm pleasantly surprised, you know, after I pass on, then wonderful. And if I'm not and there is no afterlife, then
you're not going to know it.
Well, A, you won't know it, and B, you'll at least have done your most to live the most fulfilling life possible here on Earth, as opposed, again, to, you know, hoping for something else and perhaps maybe not being as thoughtful or cautious or careful about how you lived here.
How many people would live recklessly, Matthew, if they got to that mindset?
Well, and that's a good question, but at the same time, think of how many people live recklessly with the other mindset. People, you know, strapping bombs to themselves, for instance, a history of religious war and religious martyrdom, people feeling if they died perhaps in battle in the name of their gods, they'd be rewarded somewhere. So on the other side of the coin, you know, a lot of people have been throwing their lives away and making some pretty terrible decisions and what we could call, you know, unethical decisions because they thought, you know, based on their paradigm, they were going to be rewarded. Again, it's very hard to predict. I'm well aware of the fact that what I wrote is not only controversial, but who knows, possibly dangerous, because I do know that, you know, as I write, this is an instinct. Humans are instinctually born, predisposed to believe in some form of a transcendental reality, afterlives included, as a coping mechanism to help us deal with the anxiety that comes with our unique awareness of death. So I call it nature's white lie. And nature doesn't put things in us frivolously. If it did this, then it did it for a reason. And it's very possible that the very truth, or as I see it, that I'm trying to emphasize, that it's all just emanation of the brain and it's not real, perhaps this is contrary to our own nature, our own biology, to, you know, be conscious of that, aware of that, and it's possible that it would be a destructive thing. Perhaps right now, if like all the world leaders said, you know, we've just had a conference with all the scientists in the world and it's generally agreed there probably is no God.
This discussion, like most of our common conversation, is ignorant of what true science is. But before I discuss true science with you, I must make clear the false science which is being published in order to get funding at the university and from federal governments and so forth is not true science. And this has always been true. I would quote from you from, 1 Timothy 6:20. O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding the profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science, falsely called. Science, the study of truth, is fundamental to reality. So the discussion has to do with true science. And true science is built on postulates. Postulates are the concepts that must be accepted to have something of reality to reason on. What exists that you can talk about it? What do you accept exists? And in reality, space is not created or destroyed. Matter is not created or destroyed, and the energy or motion of matter is not created or destroyed. Well, accepting these three postulates, space, matter, and motion, being eternal and infinite, and then to reason on that, we understand that the density of matter is finite. Matter is everywhere, in everything, and that's a whole nother thing. The ignorance, the destruction of the ether concept by the Michelson-Morley interferometer and all the false science that has come from that, and the Einstein putting the 1 over the square root of 1 minus v squared over c squared on the wrong side of the equation, relating it to mass rather than a coupling factor of the field as the particle moves faster. But those are all other things. Let's get down to operationally defining what we mean by God. God is everything, not created or destroyed. Eternal, space, matter, and motion. And God's laws are the laws of reality, physical and behavioral. And it's confusing because one of God's behavioral laws is that which propagates, is that which goes on to create the future. And before we, as part of God, we're made out of God's dirt. We're intelligence in God's body. But before this logical intellect was there, it was just what physically dominated to survive and make babies. And that's just a simple law. What propagates? Then comes the idea of cause-effect relationships, logic. So all of a sudden, where the female great apes nursed their infants off into the second molars, with humans, with the logic of a cause-effect relationship, millions of years. Look at cats and dogs, the rape that goes on when they are in heat. It's the same genetic history that females and males have, the domination of the alpha male or whatever. But the great ape females didn't have the logic to associate the birth 6 months later with the rape. But once humans evolved logical speech, this knowledge was there. So along with the genetic contempt for the rape that exists in many mammals, don't misunderstand. There are some like doves and others that have developed respectful relationships of caring for one another, and some mate for life. That's another thing. But we're talking about reality here. Space, matter, and motion. And we're made out of God's dirt. And we have the genetic load from what survived. And that the resentment of the male dominance on the part of the non-dominant males and the females is real. And it's projected onto the children many times. That's why abortion and infanticide is so important. I would like to get to the foundation of what I would call religion, not a murdering cult. The foundation of that. And I want to talk to the Buddhists that have had such a loving spirit built on the farm family love, the same as the early Christian church, which still, believe it or not, survives. If you take the Amish roots back to the Goths and back from that to the Rus that lived around the Black Sea and had Peter and Andrew and Paul and their companions, Peter and his wife, go to the areas that reached the shores of the Black Sea, and this farm family, the Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe, was farm families, and it is love that is the heart of a culture, that of a family working there. But it's a culture. Most humans are not even good mammalian animals. Look at the way a female cat cares for its kittens, or a female dog even nursing kittens.
It is a joy to me to see Kitty and the fawn in a loving, caring, secure relationship. It's not strange to me. I wasn't raised in an apartment. I was raised in nature, growing up in the country, involved in animal husbandry. It's clear that both this kitten and fawn had a loving, secure relationship with a mother that was capable of giving that love and security. How sad the same animals could have the contempt for one another if they were not given that love and security. And for human infants, it goes so far that the child at birth and later on recognizes the mother's voice. The heart rate gets lower in positive response. But when another woman says the same thing, the heart rate gets higher due to stress. And we can condition children not to be able to love also. In Russia, in our apartment, family lived downstairs of a religious cult that has a book that says not to trust people who are not believers. And in fact, it bring them into submission or kill them. Also to deceive them. The children aren't developed enough to be deceptive. They just are very unpleasant in their coldness when I or my wife go out the door. We live in the same apartment building and they'd be playing outside. I love children. I'm a teacher and I've always enjoyed children, but they can't have a positive response to me because I'm not part of their cult.
The maternal instinct in mammals is so beautiful that it's degraded in humans. To talk about humanity and being inhuman or acting like an animal, we've got things confused there. But I'm going to stop, look at what I've been saying, and then make a clear message about reality and God. God is everything. Okay, let me go on. They talk about the soul. The soul is the culture. What's the spirit? The spirit is the outlook. What do you mean when you say these words? We need to operationally define what we're talking about, or it's a bunch of nonsense that you have to believe in things you don't even have any idea what you're talking about. And two people talking to one another without operational definitions, the reality in one mind is totally different than the reality in the other mind. So we need to get down to operational definitions.
So, good night and enjoy your evening.
Yeah.
Who knows? Some people would probably lose it. Some people would say, well, then I don't have to worry about being punished in hell and might,
They may be evil here. I mean, they may say, I'm going to rob, maim, do whatever I have to do. I don't have anything to worry about. I'm not going to go to hell.
Right. Well, first of all, fortunately, you still would have things to worry about because there is the law,
yes,
and there are prisons. And obviously, even with all of that there, hell included, it still doesn't stop a lot of people from looting and pillaging and all of the above.
I would add here the hatred for unbelievers and the justification for hatred of those that don't serve Allah in the Quran, that the rape, pillage, murder, and plunder for Allah in the Quran is why it's so appealing to many that are in prison for their criminal mentality.
So if we had that knowledge, would people do more so? Again, I could only hope not. Now, from the paradigm that I go by, which I would call a secular humanistic one, the people I consider my peers, at least in that regard, in our belief system or lack thereof, it's not like we're a group of criminals and bandits and renegades who are trying to think how to blow up the world just because we don't believe in a God or an afterlife. I would say, on the contrary, the values emphasized by people like secular humanists is that, pretty much this is our one shot. So let's all make it the best we can together, because there is no other choice. So the ethical ground for a secular humanist isn't like, hey, there's no God, let's all go loot and steal everyone. It's instead, let's try to figure out the best way we can cohabitate and maximize our experiences as a group here on Earth.
I would like to share with you my background of working with secular humanists. I was chairman of adult education in the 1980s in the Unitarian Universalist Church. In the 1970s, my wife at the time had divorced me as soon as I started teaching high school physics. She took my 3 children, 7, 8, and 9, my income, and my home. I was torn, but out of the love for my children, I loved the children I taught, and I had the blessing of teaching by the Harvard Project physics technique of small classes, 12 and 14, and they worked in pairs. My job wasn't an authority figure, it was an expert to set up the thing so they could do experiments and learn directly from reality, which to me is God. The true science is the study of reality, and that is religion. In my definition, religion is a study of reality. God is reality. God is everything. There's nothing outside of God, and we are part of God, like a cell in God's body. It's not a written description like or read the Bible, Torah, or whatever, or what the Hindus do. It is discovering reality, and there's a wonderful foundation for that. But let me go back to the Unitarian Universalist Church and share where I started to get the scientific foundation for the levels of ability to care. It was from Bruno Schuttaker, a psychiatrist that, believe it or not, did the lobotomy at the Buffalo Veterans Hospital, but he was a secular humanist and he did his best to care for people. I organized the Needs of Children seminar with 8 wonderful speakers, the Commissioner of Health, university professors and all, and Bruno Schuttkecker was one of the speakers. And what he shared with me was the articulation of a foundation that could be built on that he got from his medical training at New York University back not far from the turn of the century. That I will share with you the agenda from the Needs of Children seminar, and then I will get into that foundation and that Bruno shared, which we can build on.
It's going to be fascinating when we take calls to see how people will react. And I just want everyone to imagine for a moment that there is no afterlife, that this is it. It's over. It ends. When you wrote the God Part of the Brain, what got you to do that?
On the needs of children.
Why did I write the God Part of the Brain?
Yeah.
Greatly.
Well, I mean, I guess it's funny that we're discussing, or at least emphasizing tonight the notion of an afterlife, because I think that was part of my motivation when I was, ever since I was a young boy and first conceived of the notion that I'm going to die. I wanted to know what that meant, and as I inquired to either my parents or teachers or others, like, what happens when we die, it was pretty unanimous that everybody, was agreed that we're going to, our spirits or souls will float up to heaven and we'll all be reunited in heaven together, or some story equivalent of that. And
some things and
it's a pretty powerful thing to believe. And as I got older and started studying science and philosophy, and found myself kind of skeptical, like, they also told us that there's a Santa Claus, and now I know better, so maybe the same thing's true of heaven.
Brochure that shows the cover for that. The needs of children, and the committee consisted of 3 people. Myself as chair, and Linda D. Hummel and Nancy L. Wilkins were on the committee and helped get a very nice group of speakers on the subject, starting from an early age and going up. The first speaker was the Erie County Commissioner of Health, Dr. Don Thomas. Many professors and all were experts in their field. So this video is to just give the background of the 8 speakers in this Needs of Children seminar. Now, to go back to the menu, I could click on Introduction. The center always goes back to the top. And I'll go to Session 1, which was the Needs of Healthy Children by Don Thomas. Number 2 is Healthy Psychological Development of Early Childhood, Dr. Donna Ferriel. The third one is Daycare, which is the focus of my attention presently with Lee Condenning. Then Learning Emotions and Teacher or Parent Behaviors by Ron Gentile. Then Psychosocial Aspects of Chronic Disease on Children and Family by Michelle Alexander, Professor of Pediatrics. And then Home and Child Effects of Drug and Alcohol Abuse by Bruno Schuttkecker. Then the film producer and actor Fred Keller, The Child Justice System Observed. And the last session was Child Abuse, Physical and Sexual, A Legal View by
my friend Linda Cleveland, the attorney. This is 2012, and the seminar was in 1980, so that would be 32 years ago. I'm making this record of the seminar for my website because it's a background for things that are happening today with daycare. That will be the subject of another video that I will post on the YouTube and on the website. But to have discussion for this seminar, what I will discuss is what I remember 32 years later of the things that stood out to me. The first speaker, Dr. Don Thomas, he was a friend and member of the Unitarian Universalist congregation, lived in the Sweet Home School District and had children that went there, although I never taught his children. But I remember he was out, I believe, to Seattle, Washington, and came back from a public health executives meeting out there, and told me, Don, cut out the salt. They had presented the research showing how the use of salt correlated to arteries getting clogged up and heart attacks and strokes and so forth. His presentation, the first one, I'll look at the heading there. Needs of healthy children. Well, he started with the youngest age of the children, and there was a progression basically in age from seminar to seminar. And Don's main point was had to do with Hispanics. It wouldn't probably be relevant today, but 32 years ago, the Hispanic community in Buffalo was quite Catholic and quite religious, and the public health concern for children was unwed mothers of Hispanic background, because they were being rejected by the family, and the children suffered. The unwed mothers didn't have good support. The next speaker, Dr. Donaferio, really made an impression on me. As the moderator for the lecture, I introduced the speaker, and after the presentation there was a question and answer period, which I initiated. And when Dr. Donaferio got through, I was teaching math for the building trades, and I thought that the troubled students, that was a special program for BOCES students, Board of Cooperative Educational Services, and many of them were without fathers, were troubled, had been expelled from other school districts, so forth. And there were a number of them were what we would call hard guys. That in those days they had big leather belts and wore
boots and had chains hanging from their belts, that type of thing. And when Dr. Donaferio finished, I said, it doesn't seem, when you talk by his background was the Western New York Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Clinic, which was the main referral clinic for psychiatric problems in the schools. And I said, it doesn't seem like you're talking about my bad boys, that the leather boots and jackets and so forth. And he said, no, the street boys get into trouble, but they don't have long-term psychiatric disabilities. He said the children that have the long-term psychiatric disabilities are the ones that do not get to interact with others during their early life stage development. The child kept at home and not allowed to go out and play, not to experience just free play, that kind of thing. And it wasn't something that was present in my mind, but I noticed that where the restaurant where I'd go for coffee, one of the top students in the high school had gone to, I believe it was Harvard. He was one of the top students. His father was a dentist, and his mother was very demanding of him with his studies. And he had always academically excelled because his mother kept him home studying. And here he was, back before the year was out, back from the university and washing dishes in that restaurant. And he just couldn't cope with the stresses of being free and in a more adult environment where he had to manage his own affairs. And he had dropped out of Harvard and returned home and was washing dishes. It just reminded me of Dr. Donaferio's work. And then Bruno Schuttkecker, he was a member of the congregation. He had been in charge of the Buffalo Psychiatric Center, and he had been in charge of the psychiatry at the Buffalo VA, and was held in contempt by many because he had ordered a lobotomy, the only lobotomy performed at the Buffalo Veterans Hospital. But he's gone now, but it always struck me as strange because Bruno liked to speak to people, liked to get up in front of an audience, and he had many things to offer. I've been to his home, enjoyed fellowship in different groups that he was part of. And when I was made chairman of adult education, the different things that I sponsored, Bruno was always very glad to take part, and he had much to offer. One of the most important foundation characterization of human growth and development that was part of this seminar. It was presented by Dr. Bruno Schuttkecker, the psychiatrist, and it was him telling about New York University pre-med background on stages of human growth and development, which a healthy developmental process would take one through. The first level was narcissistic. The first level of human affection is self. And this is for the infant being born. It's the narcissistic. All it's really aware of is itself. And I always say, nice, colorful comment about that, and I'll save that till later. The next level of development in a healthy child is to care about others like self. Boys are generally attracted to boys. In very early childhood, there may not be differentiation between boys and girls. Little babies, once they've developed to the point of awareness of others, like other little babies, like self. When the differentiation of walking and talking comes, and you begin to find boys prefer to play with boys and girls prefer to play with girls. This is called homoerotic, the second stage of human affection. And the third stage, usually triggered somewhere around puberty, is attraction to the opposite sex. That is heteroerotic. And Bruno pointed out that these three levels are all meeting some personal need. They are not giving necessarily to others, but satisfying a need of self, in self. But then a couple gets married, and if they have a healthy enough foundation, they their relationship bears child, and it's the first unselfish level of love. This I refer to as you take and feed the baby and care for it, and all it does is turn the food into a diaper change, and you still care for it and feed it. And these were the four levels that Bruno was taught in pre-med. Now, the development on this, I realized and carried it further, that when I was in New York City at 17, coming through in the Air Force, and walked underneath an a tall apartment building, and here's trash and condoms on the sidewalk, and I had been on the road selling magazines, and I learned that apartment dwellers cared much less for their environment. And in the low rent projects, you could hardly stand the smell in the hallways where the people would pee and sometimes poop. But in a private residential area where there was ownership, there was much more care. And working with this, I thought about my own children and how I cared. I had bought a private home, this home right here, in the mid-1960s. And how much I cared about keeping the lawn up and fixing the house and having a nice home, and caring about the community. And then the children went down the street to an elementary school. I had concern for the quality of the schools. And then they went off to a wading pool in the summer, and I cared about the quality of the parks and pools and so forth. And then I realized that's a natural stage of development. Care for the home and children, to growing to care for the community. And then I realized as the children went off to the world of work and war or university, there was a concern for the quality of government and military, that another level of development for the world of work and war. And then as I've gotten older, understanding that it's a global community and caring about all. You can't just have one segment. My major concern now is realizing that indoctrination of children deprives them of common sense and intuition. They're confused, whether they're memorizing the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah. They're being turned into robots. They have the choice of rebelling or complying, but the socialist revolution was largely led by rebellious Jews, but they had been brought up memorizing and rebelling against their memorization, but they didn't have common sense. And the whole thing today of children being raised in apartments and in intellectual book learning and indoctrinated in this way without natural experience of that a farm child would get, raising animals and working together with the family and the close family ties. The common sense and intuition is a thing of the past for many children, and the care that they get in daycare doesn't give them a sufficient foundation for development. We now know that nerve growth factor is present at certain ages, like at 6 months old, the brain scan can show autism is going to happen because there was not the mammalian nursing bond. An animal level bond didn't happen when nerve growth factor was present in that area of the brain, and that brain area will not develop. And that's just part of the reality. It doesn't mean the person will be a bad person or an immoral person. They'll just be missing parts on the mammalian level of development. But so Bruno Schuttkecker, this is an addition for that. Much foundation built on these things.
This next clip will be the last major part. It will give a foundation, an ontological foundation to confront these evils that are being propagated today. On one side, Islamofascism, and on the other side, women's liberation, homosexual rights, and you've got anarchists together with the women's liberationists fighting the dominant male type Islamofascism. And in fact, we need to overcome the genetics, and that we can make nice little puppy dogs out of wolves. We can, if we want to, help humankind become more humane. But watch this clip, and then I'll reach the conclusions for you. The purpose of this video is to give an overview of my life's work, which is a response to the question, Is there meaning to life? Simple question, but it became very complex. I asked myself that question about when I was about 19 and realized that the motivation for creation, if there was intelligence in the process, it would be most likely because of loneliness, creating something to have company with. Because as an intelligent being, one of our most painful experiences is solitary confinement. And this led me to Sociology 101 to find out group behavior. And to know the group behavior, you need to know the individual psychology. To know psychology, you really need to know the brain physiology. To really know the brain physiology, you need to know the cells and neurology, cytology. And to really know neurology, cytology, you need to know chemistry. To really know chemistry, you need to know the atoms that make up the chemicals. And to really understand atoms, you need to understand matter, the nature of the universe, cosmology, how things came to be. Now, I regressed from being a person who had not completed high school to having degrees in physics and mathematics, and worked in carborundum research on nuclear reactor materials, creating a process for sintering B4C in a Al2O3 matrix used for stabilizing fuel stacks in nuclear reactors, and then went to teach physics so I could have the summers free for research and to spend time with my children. Just as I got through a master's degree in education and started teaching, my wife of the time divorced me, took my home, my children, and my income. It was terrible. It led me to investigate more deeply in some things, and this chart is the result of that thesis. All the details aren't completed, but I need to have the summary there for another purpose. So here's a look at the overall chart, and I will then explain the two major components, how it's made up. This is a human development chart. It actually fell into place of two separate major components. The common thread being the state of being in the center. That the first area developed in my awareness was emotional. And there's a chart on emotional that I will put up now. When my wife took my children home and income, the children 7, 8, and 9, I was devastated. And I did my best. I was blessed to have physics as a laboratory science, and the children such a joy as they discovered reality on their own. That I had such pain over the loss of my children, and no psychological counseling or tranquilizers would help. The help I finally got was I met some other men that had gone through the same thing and realized that the empathy was healing. I knew sympathy wasn't healing because my father was killed and a train hit the car when I was 12 years old. And some people in my farm town kept treating me like poor Donnie for a couple of years. And I realized that they had a problem, that I had gone beyond the loss of my father. I would spend time with his memory in the fields where we hunted, fished, and trapped, and around the garden we worked in, and things like this. But I understood sympathy was a poor response. Somebody was not emotionally that healthy, giving sympathy. Sympathy is different than empathy. And I had a friend, Mabel White, that told me about Ron Hubbard's things that this people in Scientology worked hard to work against the abuses of psychiatry, but he is viewed as Scientology is viewed as a cult. But I did learn that the scheme of by putting resistors in something to measure body resistance in the hands. It's a crude lie detector, detects stress, and Scientology questions a person, and where they're stressed, they talk to them about it. This is essentially empathy, not giving them sympathy, but talking about where they were hurt. And I learned that from Rolfing, the body, Ida Rolf discovered that the body stores bad experiences and traumatic experiences. It can be released by body massage at times, but that's a whole nother thing. At any rate, this chart of levels of emotion that Ron L. Hubbard had worked out was at least a starting point for me. That I got well beyond that, and this is what I was left with. Human life starts, and needs are met automatically in a healthy pregnancy. There's a serenity until the infant becomes a little bit too large for the womb, and then there's some discomfort. But basically in this life stage, that's where we like music from, because what we know is the mother's heartbeat and the rhythm of walking. That's why we like to dance and hear the rhythm of music. Also discovered that in doing brain scans and so forth, that a child at birth and for the first year or so of life has an automatic response to the mother's voice that is calming, and that comes from birth, during pregnancy, hearing the mother's voice while in the womb, and another woman or a man saying the same things causes stress. So that's a life stage of serenity and a reality in itself. And then the trauma of birth is a dramatic life-changing event, life stage-changing event, but the child, if well cared for, returns to serenity, except its needs are not met automatically. So it is hungry, and it learns to feed on its mother's breast, and with the comfort of the mother and the heartbeat and the care that the mother gives to the child, rocking and so forth, it's a joy. And once the child is satisfied, they return to serenity. Unless they need a diaper change, then they make some motions, and the mother runs around and gives them a clean diaper, and they're satisfied and return to serenity again. But if they don't have the joy of having their needs met, it's a problem. And the curiosity arouses them, interested, what's going on? How can I get the attention I need, and make some noises and that, and they discover that going can get the diaper change they need and return to joy, and with the satisfaction return to serenity. But the lack of a response can really be frustrating, and the child expresses it in anger and concern and deep crying. I used to sit right here where I am when my children were small and listen to the child next door go through these stages until it was screaming. The mother had a belief that you shouldn't spoil the child, so she wouldn't pick it up only when she wanted to. And it was horrendous. When I worked the night shift, I had to go down cellar and sleep to get away from the baby's trauma next door. So the different levels, and just like when we're older, if someone threatens us, we are angry. But if they pull out a knife and threaten us, then we become afraid. And if we, subjects of tyranny, might be degraded to the point where we conspire to get even with the evil dominator and have the glee of setting a trap and doing a bomb or something. But the suppression of this emotional response ends up in rage or apathy or sadomasochism, but that ends up in physical harm and physical suffering. And if there's no relief, then it ends up in death. And what happens after death? That's the idea that judgment is life's effect on the future. That's the judgment. What effect did our life have on the future? Living in others, and the physical suffering can be healed by the physical healing. That's God is just matter, space, and motion. That's nature and God's healing. Back to from this trauma to sadomasochism, rage, or apathy. But then there's Mosaic law, Moses law, to try and keep some civility of law and order. And so that can heal us to the sense of guilt and duty. And maybe the glee of feeling free a bit. Then the repent and forgive. That's what Jesus taught, that we our guilt separates us from God, from our source of existence. That by repenting, we don't have to go to a priest or someone else. We can have a direct relationship with our source of existence. And that brings us into a state of being fearful. But when we get together with others, as Jesus said, where two or more are gathered in my name, I am with them. And he also sent his apostles 2 by 2. Then the union gives us the strength to confront the falseness in the spirit of truth and express our concern, our anger, and investigate what we can do to solve the problem. And investigate, bring interest. With our interest, we discover something, and that brings joy. and joy of solving the problem brings satisfaction, which returns us to serenity. And that's the emotional chart. Well, then I understood emotion was a nonverbal response. And in the work done in hemisphere separation of people for tumors and for epilepsy, it was discovered that the right and left hemispheres function separately, especially for men. Verbal speech tends to be in the one hemisphere, and the nonverbal, like music and art, in another hemisphere, where females tends to be in both. That's why when a woman has a stroke, she is more likely not to lose speech completely. That hemisphere where speech is what is lost in a stroke. For a man, he can't talk. But the women, even though speech center in one side is destroyed by a stroke, the other side has that ability also. And that probably has to do with survival to take care of children. But because of the bonding to the mother being able to survive is more important than for the father. So he can be specialized, and that would give him an advantage in conflict or battle or hunting. But so I was working on caring, the levels of caring, separately from emotion. And this goes back to Bruno Schattkecker, the psychiatrist that gave this part of the Needs of Children seminar. And he gave the first 4 levels that he had been taught at the university, NYC. First level, narcissism, the love of self, that every healthy child loves itself. As a matter of fact, the whole world is responding to their needs initially in the womb, and then afterwards if they have a healthy mothering situation. So the narcissism is normal if a child is cared for. If they're not, you see them banging on their head and all this kind of thing, and they get sick with colicky babies, and actually can be very vulnerable to infection because they don't get nutrition, even if they're fed and bathed. There was an experiment I learned of in Soch 101 of that, where the children that were suffering when they started keeping track in Boston, it was the children of the wealthy and the children of in orphanages. It wasn't a matter of cleanliness mainly, it was a matter of interaction. The poor children living in multiple families, the immigrant community with poor sanitation, the infants were very healthy. It was the wealthy that were being cared for by wet nurses and babysitters without the natural maternal bond. They were the ones that were suffering. So at any rate, narcissism was the first level. The second level is homoerotic. Boys like boys and girls like girls. That homoerotic is normal. They knew this back at the turn of the century at NYC. At any rate, NYU. So the next level, heteroerotic. If there's a healthy foundation, the narcissism grows into homoerotic, and if there's a healthy foundation, the homoerotic grows into heteroerotic. All of these selfish. And the heteroerotic leads to marriage many times, and the pregnancy and a child. And there's another level of caring for home and child. The heteroerotic gives rise to the child, but the care for the child is the first caring that is not self-fulfilling. It's caring for another. We get something from our buddy. We get something from our wife. But the child just takes perfectly good food and turns it into a diaper change. And if we're healthy enough, we just love the little darling. There is a problem with women. I mentioned before, great apes breastfeed often to the second molars, and they don't. The mothers don't engage in infanticide. The resentment of the males is there in almost all mammals because of the dominant alpha male raping, beating up the other males and raping is millions of years of genetic history, and there's genetic resentment over the rape. And the great apes and mammals, lower mammals, don't have logical cause-effect relationship. They don't associate the birth 6 months later with the rape. So they don't have the connection of that genetic resentment of the violence done to them. Males have it too, because there's only a few alpha males. There's many males survive that are resentful also. That is the source of a type of politics. We talk about that another time. So the women, with their logic, understand, and genetically that resentment can be projected onto the child. Of course, we know there are many life stages in us, and they all still exist. That's why intimacy is so nice. We can engage in the caring like we were when we were a little baby, and care for one another, and the intimacy. But now, to get back to this altruistic level of caring for the baby, and I realized, having been a father, that I've cared for my home and I cared for my community. And then I grew to care about mankind and concern where my students were going, to military, wherever, find work. And I cared for future generations. I do care. So on these levels, and what I was surprised was to find that these two charts, emotion and caring, have a center feed that they feed one another. And now let me go to the caring chart. Now, we've discussed the basics of this chart, but here we have the caring, the conception. Human life is formed, needs are met in the womb, then there's birth, and there's serenity after the birth. Defining terms here like spirit is the outlook of the infant, and the soul is the culture of the infant. And the needs are met. There's the birthing trauma, and then there's serenity again. The first stage, all is self, narcissistic, and the satisfaction, and grows to have needs, and others have to be involved. And there's then the affection level of boys like boys, and building on top of the narcissism. And then if there's enough of a foundation, there's the opposite sex, heteroerotic. And then if there's enough affection to have an infant, the first level of altruistic caring. And then the altruistic level, next level is to care about the community that the child's going to go into, the schools, the playground, so forth. And then the child goes off to university or military or work and care about mankind in the world of work and war, and care about law and order. And then the life's process of future generations, cared about the grandchildren and care about the world to come. And the physical healing of the difficulties that we have. But this process, then we see that the two ended up, one I had developed it was upside down from the other, and I realized they fit together. And now I'll show you the chart of them fitting together. Well, you can stop frame to see the details of this chart, but I'll quickly go down the center with you. We have starting with conception and birth and the satisfaction, then the problems and solutions, investigation, confront problems, the spirit of truth, repent and be forgiven. That's Jesus Christ brought this. Law and order, Moses brought this to our culture. Physical healing, God's nature, as we learn more of the laws of nature, which are God's laws, the more we can physically heal ourselves. Of course, much of it is just the common sense that has been lost with good diet and exercise, but then ultimately we lose our physical health and die. And what happens afterwards, spiritual death, is if nothing we have is of any good for the future, if we didn't leave anything materially or behaviorally that helps, that would justify that we had existed. All right, that's the end of this overview. And I'll do a better job as I complete my thesis. Thank you. Just remember in closing, it was farm family caring for one another that gave rise to Buddhism and gave rise to the home churches around the Black Sea and elsewhere. That's when Christianity grew in America. It was farm families. And this has to do with caring. We need to work to improve the human breed, that the females care for the males and that they can have healthy homes that raise healthy children. Thank you. This is the ending message. This is the website, The Way, the Truth, and the Life. These are the guest rooms in our 3 homes, New York, Florida, and Russia. They are prepared for those messengers that Jesus prayed for in Luke chapter 10. And he gave them the instructions. Reading from Luke chapter 10, verse 1. After these things the Lord appointed 70 other also, and sent them 2 by 2 before his face into every city and place whither he himself would come. As Jesus said in Matthew chapter 18, verse 20, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am with them. Verse 2, therefore he said unto them, the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that he would send forth laborers into the harvest. This is Jesus praying for more servants and asking us to do the same. Verse 3, go your ways. Behold, I send you forth as lambs among wolves. Verse 4, carry neither purse nor scrip, nor shoes, and salute no man on the way. Verse 5, and into whatsoever house ye enter, first say, peace be to this house. Verse 6, and if the Son of Peace be there, your peace shall rest upon it. If not, it shall return unto you again. Verse 7, and in the same house remain, eating and drinking such things as they give, for the laborer is worthy of his hire. Go not from house to house. Verse 8, and into whatsoever city ye enter, and they receive you, eat such things as they set before you. Verse 9, and heal the sick that are therein, and say to them, the kingdom of God has come nigh unto you. Verse 10, but into whatsoever city ye enter, and they receive you not, go your way out into the streets of the same, and say, verse 11, even the very dust of your city, which cleaves on us, we wipe off against you. Notwithstanding, be ye sure of this, that the kingdom of God has come nigh unto you. Verse 12, but I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable in that day for Sodom than for that city. In closing, remember Matthew 18, verse 20, where Jesus said, for where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them.